let's talk a little bit about ethical non-monogamy and how it differs from what we've been discussing here. Dan, what were some of the things that you had to unlearn to get into your own journey in polyamory?
Everything, like
Fair,
basically
yeah.
all of the things. Everything that I was taught about how relationships are supposed to work, all of the sort of the Disney fantasies about happily ever after and stuff. I had to deconstruct all of it, and it sort of started and happened when I divorced after my divorce from my first wife, because I that marriage, I loved her. The love was there, but there were various issues and whatever. And when it was over, it was an opportunity for me to look at how I want to relate to people, specifically to romantic and sexual partners, and who I want to be with them. And there was a whole bunch of things that I was doing that I didn't choose for myself, that I didn't even know were choices to be made, that I had to sort of reconsider. And I went to therapy, and the therapy was very, very helpful for me. And that was long before I chose, non-monogamy,
Mm-hmm.
but just in examining who I am, what I want out of my life, it changed everything about how I look at the world. And that was, so really just deconstructing the concepts of why I'm interacting with people, and honestly just looking at it, and actually for the first time being purposeful in my journey was the biggest deal of all.
Yeah, no, I hear that. There is just an escalator that we are kind of set upon as children that says, like, this is what your life is supposed to look like. At this particular age, you're going to meet a person. Oh, I'm sorry, you're going to meet a woman. If you're a man, if you're a woman, you're going to meet a man. But you're going to meet that person. You're going to date, fall in love. Like, there's this whole trajectory that's just laid out for you. And non-monogamy is like everything that isn't monogamy. So there's this whole great number of options, and it's just about embracing a little bit of intentionality and being willing to be yourself while like asking some of these questions.
Yeah. And it's funny because I'm so, frankly, I don't want to malign vanilla, because it's a beautiful flavor and everybody should be nice to vanilla as a flavor. But I'm
Sure.
so boring in a lot of ways. Like, I don't have any kinks really. I don't have, like, I don't have any big fetishes. I wish I did. I don't. So like, it's not like I had that much to, like, I don't think of myself as that controversial. But this thing, not being monogamous, blows people's fucking minds. It's just like, people can't handle it. Really liberal people who listen to my show, thank God I'm atheist, does not have a conservative listenership. Okay, this is a very liberal show. We go to politics. So we know that everybody's basically pretty left of center. I talked about my polyamory, and holy shit, we got, a 1-star review from one of our longtime listeners. Like, people get fucking upset about it. So like, at least I got something that makes me cool.
Yeah, I when I first opened up my relationship, I definitely had a friend take me aside, and he was like, I was kind of telling him some stories and about bad dates and all these different things, and he was like, if you were worried that 25 years of being an active Christian made you a boring person, you're doing a lot of work to make up for that. But I know we've touched on some of these ideas, and we've talked about some of the baggage that the word like polygamy carries, and some of the different ways that the Mormon Church has maybe impacted people's views of any sort of non-monogamy. And I guess I wanted to ask you both to take a moment and let some of the viewers who maybe aren't familiar with polyamory or polyculture know a little bit about some of the discrimination that poly relationships still face. I mean, you talked about it just now, Dan, some of the like knee-jerk reactions. What does that look like day to day?
And I think the first thing that I would think of is that when you talk to someone and tell them that you're poly, they have a built-in idea in their mind already of what poly is. And I don't know if it's necessarily the Mormon church that intentionally shaped that, or if it's just it's just an obvious example that's one of the first things that they go to, where they say, oh, so you're one guy and you have a whole bunch of female partners. No, it's not like that. So like having to fight that initial misconception, because everybody's going to come to the table with a different idea of what poly is. And, sure, unless you like really talk to them and break that down, it's like if somebody says that they're Christian, well, that could mean one of any number of things, right? So when you say you're poly, that means something to you. It means something to them, and it doesn't always mean the same thing. So even if you're looking at another, if I'm poly and I meet someone else who's poly, we might not be talking about the same thing. So we still have to have that conversation about, okay, well, what kind of relationships do you have? What kind of interactions do you have? So that's what it is for me. That's the biggest misconception, is that all poly relationships look the same way. Clearly they don't, but it's sometimes hard to break through that barrier with someone. What do you got, Dan?
I've found that I don't know. So like, there are really tricky things like navigating family that are very clearly not going to understand. My mother, she's 86 years old. Like I said, I love her very much. And this is a part of my life that I would like to share with her. She knows my wife. She does not know my partner. And I would like for that to happen. I started to broach the topic. She smelled it coming and she shut the conversation down. She said, please don't talk about this with me. And I hadn't even really broached the subject yet. I had just sort of dipped my toe in, and my wife's family is still very Mormon, very conservative. She has no idea how to broach this subject with them. She doesn't know if, there's very real danger that she could lose her family because of this. The way that, someone coming out as LGBTQ might also run that risk.
Dan Savage likes to say that there are things that a mother has a right not to know. And I can appreciate that. But when we're talking about like the people that you love dearly, this is significant. Like this is, I think comparing it to being queer is actually very accurate and very reasonable here.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, it's one of those things where, you have to weigh the risks with the rewards in terms of coming out. You have to understand that there are social consequences to that. And you weigh that against the fact that it's very lonely sometimes not to be fully known by the people who love you, and not to be understood, and to have to hide things, and to have to try and keep track of what you've said to people, because you don't know which partner you talked about. My wife had COVID earlier on, or we think she did. She never got a test, but we think she had COVID early on in the pandemic. I didn't. I was staying at my partner's house. I stayed over there for a month trying to not get it, so that, because I had that option. But then how do you talk to my wife's parents about that when they, when I wasn't prepared, I hadn't thought about the question, oh, Dan, you had COVID too, right? And it's no, I think there's magic in me, and I it was just, I had no idea how to deal with that. There's a whole slew of things that, like, if you can't be open about your life, it becomes very complicated very quickly.
No, Dan's underplaying this. It becomes so severe. Like if you have a number of friends and some of them know and some of them don't, you very easily lose track of who's aware that I have a wife and a girlfriend, and you'll start slipping up. It's like, yeah, I saw this movie, or I took this vacation, and oh, who'd you go with? people.
Friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Flat-footed very quickly.
That's none of your business.
Well, and Dan mentioned earlier marriage equality considerations. I mean, it's worth pointing out that 3 people who have been in a committed relationship for 50 years can't get a mortgage together, or in some cases, like in the city where I went to college, they wouldn't even be able to rent a home together, let alone to buy a home together. And it's just madness in so many different ways. But I guess before, we've got some phone calls stacking up, and I want to make sure to get to as many of them as we possibly can. Before we do that, I just wanted to ask quickly if there were any sorts of misconceptions around ethical non-monogamy that you want to make sure to highlight for the audience tonight.
My biggest one is that unlike the polygamous relationships back in the day, consent is absolutely paramount in polyculture today. And there's you know, you go into any poly group and they're going to absolutely talk about being open with your partner and being open about the new people you're approaching. It's not the same kind of poly back in the day where it was like, it's not, wow, what's the best way to say this? It's not condoning cheating. It's actually having meaningful relationships with the people around you, with knowing that that you already have relationships with people around you. So the consent is the big thing for me. It's just hammering in the point that in modern poly circles, everyone knows, and it has to be okay with something. So,
yeah,
fair to say.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. You say that oh, I lost my train of thought. See, this is why you can't be on a show when you have ADHD. This is crazy. What am I even doing? Anyway, sorry, I jumped the track there. But yeah, in terms of misconceptions, I think it is vital to understand that like everybody in the group, in the relationship, is on board and has chosen it for themselves, willingly and enthusiastically, and if you don't have that, you still have a problem. So yeah, I mean, this can't be like the polygamy of old. It just can't. That's ugly and gross, and I would never want to participate in an institution that was patriarchal in nature and that's supported that had that sort of toxicity from its get-go.
Be a slut, but be an ethical slut.
Be an ethical slut.
Yeah,
I couldn't make it happen, but some of
that
you can.
Janet Hardy, Dosey Easton, read The Ethical Slut. It's a great book.